We are excited for this next session. I hope you were able to catch the YouTube concert that just concluded. What an incredible performance there. I'm really thrilled to introduce to you Christopher Mothersole, who's going to talk to you a little bit about how to build an effects pedal specifically for Marc Mellits' Dark Matter. This is a very tech-involved session, but we will have some time at the end, hopefully, for questions. So be thinking, use the Q&A function and type stuff in the chat now that the chat is working this time, unlike last session. Sorry about that. And I'm going to let Chris take it away. And yeah, go ahead.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jessica. And a huge thanks to the ICA as well for allowing me to come on and talk about this. As Jessica mentioned, this is going to be quite a tech-involved session, but I'm really, really excited to go over this piece with y'all. Because Dark Matter is one of those works that you listen to it for the first time and you're just kind of blown away by the fact that a bass clarinet can sound that heavy and metal in the first place. It's such a fun ride, and there's just a lot of equipment on the side to go with it. So I want to take the time to sort of demystify some stuff and go through the process of building a pedal board from scratch that is going to be able to tackle a piece like this. So first of all, just a little bit of background. Marc Mellits' Dark Matter is actually originally for electric bassoon, which is just such an amazing combination of words, first of all. But it was written about 5 years ago in 2018 for a consortium of, I think, about a dozen bassoonists. And it has a full pedal board of effects. We have things like multiple types of distortion, octave pitch shifting, chorus, delay, reverb. There's a half dozen different effects going on here. And so what we'll do is we'll start from the very, very beginning. And first of all, I just want to get some of the basic stuff out of the way, which is my pickup and my amplification that I'm using. So for my bass, I'm using the piezo barrel wood model pickup that's been installed onto my neck. And then that's going to be able to capture the sound and get us through all of these effects cleanly. And then for amplification, I'm using just a powered PA speaker. This is by Ion. This is their Total PA Max. And so now in the middle, we have everything else. So like I said, we've got about a half dozen effects plus an optional reverb. And so to start, it's nice to have a what's called a pedal board. So one place where you can keep all of these pedals together, so that if I'm traveling around from my place to a venue, I don't have to spend like half an hour packing everything up, putting it into a bag. And then once I get to the venue, taking another half an hour and like rewiring everything. So a pedal board is going to keep everything in one convenient place for travel purposes. And because much like a lot of you, I'm sure that when I first started getting into this stuff, I started imagining a lot of the expenses piling up like crazy. And so I was wondering, like, what are some affordable ways to get into this? First of all, the piezo barrel pickup is super affordable. I think it's about the cost of a Van Doren mouthpiece these days. But as far as the pedal board goes, what I've done here in this case is took a quick trip to TJ Maxx and just got myself like a dinner serving tray and covered this with Velcro tape and command strips. So what'll happen is that for each of my pedals on the back side, they'll have the opposing side of Velcro tape. And that way, when I stick it on, nothing's going anywhere. And then I can run my cabling and so on and so forth. So everything just stays in one secure spot. So what we'll do is I'll go ahead and set this down on the ground and we'll get started from here. And just to see how things are going, we've got a little camera down here. And so first we're going to start off with the power supply. Since we've got a number of different pedals going at one time, it helps to have what's called an isolated multi-output power supply, essentially a power brick of sorts. So something like this is Walrus Audio's Atos power supply. And this has 8 separate outputs, and each of these pedals we're going to be using today are need to be powered by a 9-volt supply. So that ensures that each one of these pedals is going to get an equal and clean amount of power from one source, rather than plugging in like 6 different things into 6 different outlets. So we'll go ahead and slap this on the board. And then that starts us off with our power. Now from here, we're going to go through in the order that I typically use for the effects. One thing that I really love about dark matter in particular is that it's for composers and performers, it's really a masterclass in how to write for live electronic effects. Mellits does a really, really fantastic job of going through in great detail everything that you need to do for this. The pedals that this work was conceived for. So you'll see that it's a bunch of Boss brand pedals, much like this one. And that way people know if they want to get started with this piece, this is some of the equipment to seek out. And below, you'll see the settings listed for each of these pedals. So it's a really nice and approachable way for bass clarinet players to get into stuff like this, because Marc does a wonderful job outlining everything for people. And of course, he mentions too that these effects can be done through laptop based software as well. So if you're more familiar with Ableton Live, this piece can also be done through other means such as that. He also goes as to list the specific order that all of these pedals should be in. I've taken the liberty to make a few tweaks myself. So as we go through, I'll be sure to mention that, normally this pedal goes in this position, but I'll go ahead and put it here for today's sake. So without further ado, we have our first pedal in my particular chain, which is pitch shifting. So this piece makes the bass clarinet just sound so deep and metal, and it's kind of a combination between multiple distortion effects and what we call a pitch shifter. So this is going to take the original sound and shift it down an octave. So you're going to get both octaves present as you're performing the bulk of this piece. So it gets you a little bit of that sort of contra-esque sort of tone down there in the basement. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and put this one on first. And then I'm going to run a cable that is going to go from the pedal to the power supply. And that can go in any of the eight outputs that are on this. Cool. And then from here, we're going to go into what's originally intended in this work to be what's called a wah sort of effect. So a wah pedal is essentially going to sweep and emphasize various bands of frequencies within the sound signal to create that, very, very funk-like sort of waka, 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 waka sort of sound. And so I've got something similar here. This is by Flamma Innovations, and this is their envelope filter mini pedal. And I just love these little mini pedals in particular. They're just cute and bite-sized, but also they're great for space saving on my board, so I don't have to crowd a bunch of larger pedals on here. So we'll go ahead and take this and put this right after the octave shifter. And normally the octave shifter pedal goes on later in the chain as Mellits intended. Though I personally like for bass clarinet to have that sound go ahead and shift it right from the very beginning. And then that way, when we run this into a couple of different distortions, that way that distortion is going to handle both of those octaves simultaneously. So I powered that one on as well. And then we're going to run it into the first of our two distortions. Mellits originally intends this to be what's called an overdrive effect that is then going to be driven into a distortion effect. So for those that are not familiar, overdrive, distortion, and fuzz are essentially all different flavors of a larger umbrella of distortion effects, where all three of those are going to purposely overload the sound signal and causing it to break up and clip a whole bunch, which gives you that sort of nasty, gritty, sort of hard rock sort of sound that you commonly hear in a lot of your classic hard rock records, as well as say like funk and a little bit of jazz too. So for our first distortion effect, we've got our Lil Rat distortion pedal. And we'll go ahead and plug this one in first. And it's worth mentioning that connecting all of these pedals, I just have these little 1/4 inch, what are called patch cables. So these are just really short versions of guitar instrument cables that I can use to connect pedal to pedal in a really nice space-saving way, because each of these are like 3 to 4 inches long. So the sound at this point is going to be octave shifted, distorted, and then that distorted shifted sound is then going to be distorted again. This is what we call stacking distortions, or gain staging. So what I'm going to do is I'm then going to put another distortion effect after this. In this case, Warm Audio's Foxy Tone Box, which is technically a fuzz pedal, actually. So this is going to be the most intense of distortion styles of effects. So we'll go ahead and then plug this one in as well. And after this, it's worth noting that I'll probably do a bunch of cable management later to make sure that all these little power cables aren't just going everywhere. Afterwards, I have what's called a modulation effect. So in this case, this is what's known as a chorus. So it's going to do time and pitch fluctuations in order to add texture and just a little bit of shimmeriness to the sound now that it's been distorted and pitch shifted. And this effect is pretty much going to be on the entire time for this piece. And with 2 effects left to go, we have delay. So in this case, it's an echo effect that is used in the middle part of this piece to create a really, really cool texture that y'all will absolutely love. It's essentially a long and highly repeated delay so that it's going to create the effect of stacked chords, much like a piano sustain pedal. And it's a lovely middle ambient section. So we'll go ahead and stack on our delay effect after that. And then finally, last but not least, we have our reverb. So this is going to create a artificial reverb that's going to be on throughout the entire piece, just to add a lot of space and ring throughout the whole thing. It creates a very large sound throughout these 7 different pedals. So we'll go ahead and stack this on at the very end as our last time-based effect. And that is going to set us all up. It's a mess of wiring right now. But again, I'll go back and do some cable management so those little power cables aren't going everywhere. So what we'll do is I'll go ahead and plug my bass clarinet in. I'll plug this into the amp, and then we'll get a performance of this going. And with that sort of timing, I think we'll actually have a few minutes for questions, which is awesome. So I'll go ahead and plug this all up and get the microphone set up. And I hope y'all enjoy. This is Marc Mellits' Dark Matter. And that's our piece. We're gonna turn the microphone back up for volume a little bit for talking. But cool. We actually have a few minutes. So if there are any questions, Jessica, I don't know if we want to take maybe like a handful of them.
I see a question asking, what type of pickup are you using?
Okay. I'll go ahead and turn the PA off. So I'm using a pickup known as the piezo barrel, which is made by Stephen Francis out in Australia. Um, all the information for that can be found at piezobarrel.com. It's a wonderful direct, what we call piezo style mic. So tiny little thing with your 1/8 inch plug. There's a little gain adjustment screw on the side. And this would screw right into a pickup port on my neck. Or for soprano clarinet, I've got a pickup port on the side of my barrel as well. Really wonderful and handy little device. Works a lot better than trying to do all these effects with with an external microphone. But yeah, as well as Jessica pointed out, there's a lot of different resources and different things on my website as well, from demo videos to sections of the website that break down the equipment that we've talked about today, as well as all the effects that I currently use on my main board. Although the board we built today honestly isn't too dissimilar from what I currently use. It's mainly just not a dinner tray.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So do you have a recommendation for a person looking to get into EFX clarinet playing? A piece maybe that isn't as involved.
Yeah. When you're first starting to get into this sort of stuff, starting off with pieces that involve maybe like one effect or maybe two effects at a time can be really, really nice. There are a lot of wonderful pieces out there for clarinet and delay. So Jenny Brandon, for example, has a couple of pieces for solo clarinet with delay. One other piece that I think you'll actually hear later today, I believe, Jeremy Wolitz is doing Laurie Arvino's variations on themes of Black Sabbath. Also a really, really phenomenal piece for bass clarinet and delay. And so what I'm working on that part of the website, I'm working on redoing my database for all of these pieces as well, so that people can know where to find these works. And then there's another piece for clarinet and delay out there as well. So for people that are wanting to look into, pieces but aren't sure where to look, again, they're always welcome to reach out through my website, and I'd be happy to provide some recommendations for rep to get started with. Let's see, and I'll go ahead and scroll through and see if there's anything else, but I don't think there is. But I know that this is a lot to talk about in a span of half an hour, so I appreciate y'all coming out and going on this journey with me of building this pedal board together. And again, there's tons of resources on my website. What got me interested in these effects? Oddly enough, the first time I heard this sort of stuff was with horn. There was a guy who gave a presentation at the International Horn Symposium that he called rock horn, where he had a full pedal board of effects as a horn player up in front of a rock band sort of thing. And I just thought that was the coolest thing ever. So I just spent a lot of Googling afterwards trying to figure out how to get that to work for clarinet too. But that's the beauty of this piezo barrel mic too, is that it can work for a number of different instruments. Steven's gotten it to work for just about every single band instrument that you can imagine, except for maybe like oboe, because oboe is a little bit more tricky to mic in that fashion. But yeah, it's a wonderfully versatile pickup that gets you to do a lot of stuff.
Awesome. I think we're out of time. Our premiere is getting ready to start for our next session. So I'm going to drop the link here in the chat. Follow that over and we will see you there. Thanks so much, Chris.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, everybody.